Who's the most famous person you've talked to for more than 30 seconds? Before we start, be sure to like and subscribe to be the first to know about new videos. Comment your answer below. Dave Chappelle. I was working night audit overnight at a mid-luxury hotel in Napa. He and 6 to 7 friends rode up on motorcycles at like 2 a.m. and asked to get rooms for 2 nights. Apparently, they were in a road trip to nowhere and would just stop each night where they stopped. They had a few people following them in a truck and trailer. He is a pretty legit insomniac and would sit in the front steps for 5 to 6 hours each night on his phone smoking. They decided to extend and ended up staying a total of 6 nights. On night 2, I went out and asked for a light and we ended up chatting a few hours. It repeated for 3 nights and I got to hang out with him about 10 hours total. Smart, thoughtful, articulate, and genuine person. The humor is just him. I was actually blown away with how precise his natural wit and timing was. Saw him at a show in SF last year and he recognized me. Shouted out from stage, "Yo, I know you. You still working nights? Great human." Jim Carrey and Robin Williams. They visited the St. Jude Children's Hospital in Memphis, Tennessee. They both were incredibly nice and hilarious. This small kid fell into the floor and was crying and kicking his legs, so Jim Carrey in a very expensive suit dropped to the floor and did the same just to stop him from crying. Robin Williams wore the nose from Patch Adams and much more hairy than he looked in the movies. Buzz Aldrin. Just my family and I got to spend a few days with him touring around the Kennedy Space Center. I was 12 and had no idea what kinds of questions to ask him. So all I could think of was, were you scared during launch? And, what does moon ground feel like? I got back in contact with him a few years back when I called to notify him that my dad had passed away. He said that he remembered my father and was proud that I followed in his footsteps by majoring in aerospace engineering for my bachelor's. Steve Irwin in an elevator when I was 11. He asked me where I was from and if there was any crocodiles in the pool, and I told him I went to his zoo and how cool it was. He was exactly how you think he'd be, just a really nice guy and a great dude. I also stood next to Usain Bolt for a while at the airport. I hadn't slept for over 24 hours and smelled like shit, but he was still happy to take a photo with me before we went our separate ways. Sigourney Weaver. Just after Aliens was released on VHS, a buddy of mine and I were riding up the gondola at the mountain where we were on the ski team. She was in the singles line, and we didn't know who she was until the end of the ride up 10 minutes, when she said something, and he and I, both being about 12, so we had both obviously seen Aliens, as good children of the 80s, were both like, "Ripley?" She was kind enough to repeat "Get away from her, you bleep," for us. Played a round of golf with Bill Murray, was awesome. Jason Momoa. Bumped into him when I went rock climbing with my girlfriends. He liked my Batman shirt, haha. Dolly Parton. My grandpa is good friends with her. She's a peach. Jason Momoa. He was lost as bleep in Atlanta Dragon Con, whoop whoop, and I happened to be walking by as he was turning in place trying to get his bearings. I was going to the same building, so I offered to walk him over. People assumed I was his handler, and just left us alone. We had small talk the whole way, and I was being super chill, not fangirling or anything. When we get where we're going, he thanks me and says, "I'm Jason, by the way." I say it's nice to meet him, and we shake hands before parting. That dude is cool as hell. Patrick Swayze. Dude was super nice. I used to work at a small airport in Van Nuys, California. Mr. Swayze and his wife owned an older King Air that they flew themselves. My very first day on the job, while I was standing on a ladder fueling his plane, Mr. Swayze was inspecting his plane before a flight. He found a small puddle of fluid left behind by a previous aircraft on the ground under one of his engines and dipped his middle finger in it, held it up to me and asked, "Hey, what the bleep is this?" He clarified that he was just joking when he saw me internally freaking out. He usually tipped really well whenever I helped with his bags and pulled his truck around, especially when his golden doodle clawed me in the face once, and I remember his wife coming to an older, unused hangar once to pull a litter of kittens out from under a car to take them to the vet. This was all before he got his cancer diagnosis, and I left the job before he died. I do remember being legitimately sad for his wife when I read he had passed. The guy didn't really take too much time to know me, but he was always very friendly, very polite, and made it a point to treat us like people. I met a handful of famous and not famous, but connected and wealthy people while I worked there, but he was the one I'll always remember. Dude was awesome. The future Queen of the Netherlands, she is like 16 and goes to the same school as my little brother. Only famous in my own country though. When Iron Man was filing, I was working for the Department of Air Force's law enforcement. I was in charge of verifying all the people working on the production. I was given a 23-page list of every name with an Iron Man poster as a cover page. I had a Lincoln Town car pull up and handed a stack of driver's licenses. I checked them and noticed a Downey wasn't on the list. I looked in the vehicle and Robert Downey Jr. was staring at me like I was in shock. I said, "I'm sorry sir, you're not on this list." He pointed to the Iron Man poster and said, "There I am." I asked the driver to pop the trunk, giving a firm command presence and investigating demeanor. He popped it and I asked RDJR if he had any hookers or blow in the trunk. He was super nervous and just started laughing. I told them to have a good time. Fast forward to the filming of Iron Man 2. Town car pulls up, stacks of IDs, RDJR looks at me and says, "Oh bleep. Don't pop the trunk." Pat Sajak. I was on Wheel of Fortune. Conan O'Brien, met him at a live show last year. Super tall, nice guy. Richard Rock, Nobel Prize winner of chemistry in 2005. Not famous for everyone, but very famous in chemistry. I'm an Australian, so is Chris Hemsworth. We had a 2-minute conversation because our mother used to chat with each other before mine died. Mike Tyson. Pre-hangover, post-face tattoo, so pretty much rock bottom. Ellie Kemper, Erin from The Office. Talked to her for a while. Had no idea she was famous until photos from that night out were on Facebook and people commented. Now I watch The Office and probably would have froze up and been super starstruck. Ali Ermi, the Gunny. Just an all-around down-to-earth badass dude. Met him at World War II weekend here in PA years ago, along with my younger brother who got inspired to become an US Marine. It was an honor to meet him. My great-uncle James Garner. RIP. He was amazing. Very nice and loved us kids. The WWE wrestler The Undertaker, he was related to a friend of mine a few houses down the street while I was a kid. This was before he was famous. He was always quiet, even then, but also watchful, attentive, and very gentle. I was only between 5'8" at the time total, but it was fun to greet him on the porch when he was visiting and stick out your hand to shake hello. He'd do that, then clamp on and slowly lift your whole body in the air by that hand/wrist until you were eye to eye, and he'd just look at you while you laughed and wriggled. You could see he was amused too. He was great. To this day he helped to set the stage for what I liked about men and would ultimately look for. Keanu Reeves. Exchanged a few words and took a picture while he was in my family's coffee shop. Robin Williams. When I was in high school, he used to come to my hometown in SE, Alaska. We were waiting in the then New Ketchikan Walmart. Lines were taking forever. He was surprised I had a cell phone as a teen in 2001. Was more surprised at how it wasn't more expensive than the lower 48. He was super friendly and likely because of my age a bit of a goof. Dude was always one of my heroes. I think I played it cool. Tom Hanks. He was the host for the National Christmas Tree Lighting, and I volunteer with the decorations every year. He was looking at some and talking to his wife about them. As I was facing away at first I just kept thinking that sounds like Woody from Toy Story. I turn around and lo and behold it was The nicest couple you could imagine, just pleasant conversation for a few minutes and they were called off to do something. Both pleased and disappointed I didn't ask for a selfie, but I was geeking out nonetheless. B. Arthur. She was so sweet and sincere, I kinda fell in love. Robin Williams. I wanted to teach him to windsurf and he wanted to take a lesson from me but he could not because he said the people who own him would not let him, and that he is under contract and they watch his every move, and it is horrible. My life is not my own, he said. We also talked about Mrs. Doubtfire for a long time, how the ending made me cry and how real it was. So human he was with me, so open. He was short and very furry, delightful. I was totally taken. It was 1994 or 5 at a hotel in the Caribbean during a big fundraiser with Christopher Reeves. Surreal. Eric Andre. Mostly because I was fumbling around with my phone to take a picture and he was making fun of me, which was pretty cool. I was at a party that Alan Tudyk happened to be at. He hopped into the drink line right behind me. I very carefully didn't nerd out on him, just let him know I was a fan and really appreciated his work. He asked me what I did, we're in line so why not, right? So I told him, and he just kept asking follow-up questions and really just engaged me in conversation even after we'd gotten our drinks for another 5 to 10 minutes. Just a centered and gracious dude who couldn't have been more down to earth and friendly. That'll always be my favorite celebrity interaction. About 5 years ago, Giannis Antetokounmpo, one of the greatest basketball players on the planet, came into the pizza place I was working at. He was still so new to America and Milwaukee that he had his handler with him. I freaked out. The family who owned the place and was working had no idea who he was. I tried to keep my cool as I asked him how he liked the city and told him it was great to see him with the team. Developed a huge man crush on him when he was trying to decide on his drink. I will have the Mount Dew. No. I will have the root beer. I don't think he had ever tried one and he was so excited about it. Dude is so down to earth and humble and I hope he retires a buck. Living, probably Mick Jagger, multiple times on 2 different islands dating back to the early 90s. Once on a beach he overheard me telling a friend I hate Test cricket because it's boring and I only watched one-day internationals, and he spent about 20 minutes schooling me on why Test cricket is awesome. Deceased, Princess Grace family friend when I was a kid, talked mostly about craft from what little I remember and taught me to press flowers. Yo-Yo Ma. He's such a nice guy, and he let me touch the Strat. It was awesome. He was also fascinated by my sparkly grey nail polish. Steven Tyler came into my car dealership. One of the managers came up to me and said, "I need you to help a very special client." I joking asked who and said, "It isn't another footballer player, is it?" He didn't think it was funny. Walked to where Steven was and my jaw dropped. Hard to maintain professionalism when you have music royalty in front of you. After he had left, one of my co-workers came up to me and said, "Well, that was the dude from American Idol." I wanted to slap him. Angelina Jolie. She was super nice and sweet, and like all celebrities you meet seemed shorter than you'd think. I'm 5 feet 11 inches and she's 5 feet 7 inches. I do remember though she wasn't as astonishingly beautiful as her reputation would suggest. She just seemed like an average person if anything, and pretty skinny at the time. She was cool though, talked for a little bit, said I was a huge fan of her work and yada yada yada. Very cordial and polite. Bryan Cranston. Just a few months after the Breaking Bad finale, I used to work on the Sony Pictures lot and he was leaving the cafeteria. One of my co-workers wanted a picture but was too starstruck to talk to him. I hadn't watched Breaking Bad at that point, so I was able to play it cool and chat with him for a minute. I had a lot of other interactions with celebrities at work, but that best fits the theme of this post. Weird Al Yankovic. The second time I met him. First time I couldn't talk, haha. Matt Damon. Several years ago when he was in my home city promoting Invictus. Invited him to my place to have dinner, was awesome and I would do it again. John Goodman. Read a book to me as a small child at a Barnes and Nobles. Andy Reid, the coach of the Kansas City Chiefs. Me and my family saw him at the KC airport around 2015, and he was on his way back from a vacation in the off-season. He was a super chill guy and I was kinda starstruck, since I love watching the NFL. Roger Bumparslow, the voice actor for Squidward. Adam Sandler shot a movie in my hometown. One of the nicest guys I've ever met. While filming, he'd also play basketball with some of his co-stars in my elementary school's gym, and every morning he'd stand in the hallway making jokes, giving kids high fives. He tried so hard to make each kid feel special, such a genuinely kind man. Mark Ruffalo, met him at a gas station in upstate New York and he is one of the kindest and most humble people, celebrity status aside, that I've ever met. His wife has a really great kitchen supply store in Narrowsburg. Everyone should check it out. When I was 14 I got a speaking role on a show called Ed on NBC and got to chill with John Slattery before his Mad Men fame. He was really nice, knowing that I was new to professional acting, and hung out with me when we weren't shooting. Very lovely person, and I recall the producer/director, also guy who auditioned me, Tim Bustfield, said to me that John was one of the most underrated actors in the business. He was so right, evidently. Zachary Levi, of Shazam and Chuck fame. Snoop Dogg. He's as awesome as everyone thinks he is. The King of Norway. Also a K-pop star when I translated for him an evening when his band was in Norway. John Goodman, a few months back. He's just as wholesome as you'd think. Great guy. Robert Downey Jr., best night of my life. Paul Rudd. This probably won't count, but I had a small conversation with him before he went in for the Ant-Man premiere. Really nice guy, short guy, still very nice. You have been visited by Sad Cat. Like this video and subscribe to the channel to make Sad Cat happy again.